Hello, and welcome to the workshop Intro to Cinema 4D. Hey, look who it is. It is Max. He just walked in. So I'm going to be talking about my favorite program. I even got the shirt. Um, yeah,
Very nice.
Cinema 4D. Um, what it is or why I use it? It is most commonly used in the industry for 3D motion graphics, which is a subset of animation that often utilizes text or abstract shapes. It is essentially animated graphic design in 3D. For those who don't know, Cinema 4D is a full 3D modeling and animation suite. Um, and one of its most common applications is title design. So if you're ever binge watching a show on Netflix, I know now they skip the intro, but the intros tend to be something that the studio will either outsource to another company or they do really quickly in house. And it's oftentimes done with Cinema 4D. If it's 3D, you'll see cool shit happen, and it's done in cinema. So, yeah, its strengths is it has a fast workflow into Dynamics. That's what it's mainly used for because they want shit to look good quick. It's the full 3D creation suite. You got modeling, simulation, like hair, and there are even plugins to uh, bring that, make that better, like X Particles, which has a lot of swarming particle simulations that can be done in it. It does have sculpting. It can texture, and it does do basic animation, rigging, and whatnot as well. What it is very well known for is integration with Adobe After Effects. The pipeline between After Effects and Cinema is very tight. After Effects even comes with Cinema 4D Lite, and that allows you to use basic features like 3D point tracking if you're trying to composite a 3D thing onto your 2D footage. Also, it is now bundled with Redshift Renderer because Maxon recently bought Redshift 3D. So our revision 21 and onward will have an option for you to buy that will be bundled with Redshift. Weaknesses: UV mapping. It's really, really bad, and I will go into this because it is not great. It is very common that people will export into Maya to do UV mapping and or 3ds Max, literally anything else, and then bring it back into Cinema. And in North America, it is only really industry standard for motion graphics. It is much more standard in Europe for visual effects in movies. It's not very much seen here. Here, it is very firmly planted in industry pipelines for film to use Maya and Arnold. But the uptake in Houdini actually, and the compatibility between Houdini and Cinema is something special, and that's bringing Cinema more into the industry light. Because in Houdini, you can program uh, effectors for Cinema to be used in Cinema and rendered through Cinema. So that's something very advanced that I am very scared to learn, but will eventually have to. So let's get into the grid of it, modeling. I'm sure y'all are familiar with the idea of modeling. This is your interface. Let's start with that. When you start it up, this is what it looks like. You will have squares around your thing and many other squares within it. That's pretty standard. Up at the top right, you'll have different layout presets. So this is where it starts. You'll also have an animate layout where it accentuates the timeline and the F curves and all that. The UV edit. So this is where you'll be painting on textures and stuff, where you can do new textures. You can save your textures that you make in here, even though it's very like MS Paint tool set. You can save them as Photoshop files directly, so you can open them in Photoshop, and all of the layers that you make in here will be preserved. Um, I'll show you what that's useful for later. Model, I never really use this stuff. I guess you have a little more tools at the bottom here, but it's generally the same as startup, which is what I use. And you can also, of course, make your own layout. So because I use Redshift Renderer, I don't have it on here, but it has its own sort of tools to use. I've just dropped them onto the top bar and saved that as my own preset so that I can quickly drop a Redshift camera or a Redshift light in there so it's easier to use. So I'm going to go back up to the startup one. So just so you know what we're looking at, here are your controls, your spatial controls, pan, scale, rotate, all the same. If you hit space, you tend to go back to select, and then when you hit space again, you'll go back to your last used tool. So it's very quick to do, quick shifting. You have your X, Y, and Z, so if you're moving an object, you can just drop an object from here. It's that easy. You can click and hold that, and you get all of your different shapes here, your primitives. Also get your little figure. So if you want to do a quick into a character, you got that. So if you want to just move along the planes or a specific plane and you don't want to grab any of these arrows, you can just activate which one you want and it'll only move along there. That's nice. This is a global versus local shift. So if you rotate it, your axis changes. This will just set it back to, if you want to move it globally and then whatnot. Over here you have a spline tool. So you can literally just draw a spline in here, whatever that does. And you got that there. You can also import .ai files, Illustrator files, directly into here. And it'll preserve all your splines and stuff so that you can actually extrude them and do complex stuff with that. I'm going to delete this spline for now. Here's your hierarchy. So any sort of objects you drop in will be here, and it does have parenting. So this is where you'll see if you drop in a subdivision surface and drop your cube in there, it becomes a mushy cube. It's still very much a cube. Up here is, you'll notice you can't see the topology. That's something you can just put on right in display, and then you can see it there. Then you can deactivate any things like that. So it's a non-destructive workflow that allows for more procedural working. So you don't have to directly destroy the object every time. So anything isn't permanent in that way. You can always go back in case something fucks up. Can I say that? Okay. Well, I said it anyway. So that's there. Yeah, so as far as modeling goes, it's pretty standard. You have your cube here, you just drop your shape. You can't edit it directly yet once you've dropped it. You can, while it's in this state, you can add segments and whatnot around the different planes in this little window. This is your object window, so right when you drop something in, it will immediately show its main modifiers there. And if you want to make this editable, it's just a click of this button over there. And now you can go into your vertice, edge, and face selections. And over here, right-clicking, you can show basically all the tools you're able to use. Cinema's also got its Shift-C, which is the overall search. So you can do extrude, and you can click that, and then just drag the face, and there you go. Other than that, that's basically, you can do your edge selection, do loops there, and then this bar will come up. You can add more. It's like very quick response time. I'm pretty sure Maya has something like this too. And this bar is the loops that were just added using the yeah. So I went to loop and path cut. So you can add one wherever you want it.
I've never used that. Okay.
Yeah, over here, this will like center it. But you can also add more, and then if you want an exact percentage, you can move each individual one as well, and you can also recenter them. So it has all of your standard modeling tools in there, and yeah, that's how Cinema do the modeling. And I had that selected, so it deleted that whole face. Yeah. What else can I show? Oh, so cool thing with this is I was gonna do a spline just to show this stuff. So you can draw your spline, not the greatest. I don't know what that really looks like, but there you go. An easy way to make like a wire or something is to use the spline tool and then go into the other views. This is important. I should have covered this first. To get to your other views, you just click in the middle mouse and you have all of them here. So this one is top, you have front and right, and you can even change those with cameras. So if you don't want top here and you want bottom, you can do it there. But I don't know, I like top. Anyway, so in Spline, if anyone's used Rhino before,
Yes.
there are like ways to easily turn that spline into a 3D sort of tube. You can do that with the sweep. So if you want, you can sweep the spline, putting it under the parent function. In Cinema, it's pretty easy to remember where things go if you want to activate them. Green tends to be the parent modifier, and purple will be the child modifier. So bend, if you want, that would go under the spline. I don't know if you can actually bend the spline, but you can fit it to the parent. And let's see. Yeah, so you can bend a spline like that. And again, it has a very non-destructive workflow, so you can uncheck it at any time in case you want to go back to that. We're going to leave it there because it looks goofy. And then back at sweep, you can sweep a circle around it to make that tube, or really any other, sort of primitive shape under the pen tool. So we're going to do a basic circle and sweep that around the spline. So it actually goes right next to the spline, or on the same level, but under the sweep. So now you have a real chunky sweep. And like I said before, all of the front hand properties are put right at the bottom right. So if you click the circle, you can change the radius right here, make it look nice and cool. So you got that. So that's a quick way to make, wires on the ground and whatnot, or tubes. And yeah, so again, the bend modifier also does not destroy that as well. If you wanted this to be your final object, say you were exporting into another program, you could go up to the top and go back over to this top left thing where you can enable or make editable. So it'll make it editable, and all of your children and whatnot have become, it compressed it. So now it is permanent. All of the changes and effectors you put on it have become permanent. So that's that. Yeah. This is some pretty stuff you can do. These were rendered in Redshift, so I don't think we're going to go into rendering in this one, but I'm going to knock out MoGraph and Dynamics as the same and make something pretty cool. Hopefully you guys like it. So let's see what we got. Under the MoGraph tab, you have quick access to these things. So if you want to do some title design, we have MoText, which is basically just 3D text. But you can put in here any kind of text, like, I don't know, what should we do? Let's do 3, and hopefully you'll see why in a bit. So here we have our 3. We can make that a little more deep, or not. Just leave it like that. It looks fine. So what I would like to do around this is let's make a countdown. So we'll make a countdown of numbers that are comprised of little spheres. I love doing this. When I started using Cinema, Alex Schupel was the one who taught me. He dropped down by my computer, knocked this out in a few minutes, and left me to just wonder what I was doing with my life. And I'm going to hopefully impress that same kind of feeling. So we've got to take a sphere if we're going to make this out of spheres. Now that's a very large sphere and a very small number, so we can correct that by bringing that a little bit smaller. And now in order to put it around this 3, we're going to have to clone it. And to clone it, we need a cloner. So we can shift C that because they do move things around in the different revisions, the updates. And I'm used to revision 20, and this is 19. Search up a cloner, drop that sphere in the cloner. We now have 3 spheres. And in here, instead of linear, let's do object. And then we have to specify the object. So we can take our little cursor here and do MoText. Now, we have 1 sphere. Let us up the number if we can. I might have done this the wrong way, but let's hope not. Maybe we don't need MoText. Maybe we need, yes, I know what we need. I'm an idiot. We need text. Cool. So let's do that. Text 3 cloner. This might take a while because I'm in Colab where I don't get to do anything fun. Ah, there we go. That's what I wanted. So yeah, now there's a lot of spheres. And around here, we can now, yes, now that it recognizes it as a spline, we have all these other options. Okay. Count, I want to up that up a bit. A lot. A lot. Yeah, we want more. Yes, okay, that's a lot. That's a good amount. Let's shrink that sphere.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna. What did you hit to get the 3? Excuse me, all the spheres line up on the
3, I just cloned, I dropped the text right into the object for the cloner.
Okay.
So we set the cloner to object and we just dropped the text in there. So now that we have all of these wonderful spheres, they're very clumped together. So now we have to start using dynamics. What we're going to want are colliders. And we're going to want these spheres to collide within themselves. So on the sphere, we'll right click and go to simulation. Now let's use a rigid body because that is what will do it. And we want it to trigger immediately. Is down here. And individual elements, just so we make sure that because it's in a cloner, it's going to try to recognize it all as the same object. We would like all of them to be individual elements. That way they'll push off from each other. And you can see that by pressing play. And they explode. So these is not really animated or traditionally keyframed. So if you go back, it will not do it. This is a dynamic that is being simulated in real time. Now, if we want to get it back to the 3, in the dynamics, we can go to the force tab and have the objects follow their position. And the lower the number here, the weaker the force. So it'll see that, it jumps away because they're pushing away from themselves, and then they come back together. But we want them a bit tighter, so we're going to up that follow position. Yes. All right. Now they are rotating like crazy. That's not a terrible problem, but we can also follow rotation, maybe a bit stronger, just so that, they're relatively the same. Here's our 3. Got that. So we have these dynamically activated bouncing around spheres, but now we need to have it count down. So we can go up to the text, and here's where we'll combine the two forms of animation of dynamic animation versus keyframed animation. We will have our 3. We'll drop a manual keyframe. As you can see down here, this is where all the traditional animating functions are. We can drop that for a 3. Even also here, everything can be keyframed. Every setting. So if you're even making materials and whatnot, you can keyframe material changes. So over time, you can have it turn from metal to glass, and it'll blend into itself if you want, or it can linearly go into the next one. Linearly. Directly, yeah, okay. So here you can even go from there. You can just hit the manual keyframe there and let it play for a bit, I guess. And then we're going to want to change it to a 2. And then we can keyframe that. And then we'll let it go. And maybe about like here. Do 1. It's not exactly seconds, but you know, it's just us over here. Yeah, so these have become 3, 2, 1. So we go back to the beginning. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
It comes back. So down here, like finessing it to not have that much clump, I guess, you might want to decrease the force of the position so that it has more, I don't know, spread. It also depends on the points. So if it is not very uniform on here, on the text object, try to see intermediate points. Let's go uniform. 3. Okay, now the force is way too low. 3, 2, 1. There you go. So it takes a little finessing, but you get to the, you know, the achieved or the expected result sooner or later. Yeah. And also, again, with the procedurals, everything can be activated, deactivated. They have these 2 little circles, if you can see that, next to the checks. I had no idea what those were for the longest time. The top one is actually visible in editor, and the bottom is visible in render. So you don't have to, you can separate which is which. I don't know why they didn't just specify that, but yeah, there's that. So that is how you can nicely combine simulated animation with keyframed animation and in Cinema, and you get a really quick result. So using this kind of technique, you can see something explode, come back, and see Netflix, and then, you know, that's what they kind of do. This is the basic workflow that they would use. What else can I show? On the presentation, I suggested UV mapping. Oh yes. Oh yeah. It's really bad.